Welcome to the KISC My Health Radio show series on Building Fortunes Radio. KISC My Health is brought to you by the universally recognized Cranberry King, Captain Cranman, Stephen Lukawski. Over the past 30 years, Stephen has worked with North American dietary supplement companies in the nutraceutical industry. His efforts and connections generate ingredient sales through innovative delivery systems and effective marketing and brand management strategies. Today on KISC My Health, Stephen is joined by guest host Peter Mingils. Make sure you check out previous KISC My Health episodes at www.buildingfortunesradio.com or KISCMyHealth.com. Along with our marketing partners, we are here to help our customers improve their health, build their businesses, and make the world a better place. At KISC My Health, we know how much your health and your business means to you and the people important to you. So spread the word. Tell another friend. Join our newsletter and go make a difference in your world. Now, on to our show with your hosts, Captain Cranman and Peter Mingils. Take it away, Peter.
Hello, everyone. Peter Mingils here. You are listening to the KISC My Health Radio show with myself, Peter Mingils, and Stephen Lukawski, and we have a special guest for you, as we usually do. So for those people listening in, I want to say thanks for listening in, and we broadcast this all over the place, and I'll get to that in just a second. But some people ask me, they say, when did you come up with the name KISC My Health? Well, it all started with Building Fortunes Radio. So I own that. We've been doing that since 2012. I was doing some radio shows where I wanted to pass microphones to people that had the right stuff and were saying the right things. And one of our guest hosts on Fridays was Jim Turner. Jim Turner was an attorney over in Washington, D.C. He ran with an organization called Citizens for Health. Citizens.org is their domain name, and they're still in business. But Jim Turner was one of the original Ralph Nader Raiders. And for those people that are familiar with that name, he did a lot of stuff with consumer advocacy, I'm going to say. You know, the Shea stuff that you people in natural ingredients know about, and did a whole bunch of other things with homeopathy and acupuncture and a whole bunch of stuff. He'll even say things like words like natural and organic are kind of defined by some of the work that citizens have done. Well, we were doing radio shows for over a decade, and then suddenly Jim Turner passed away. And that was tough for me because Jim was, you know, a regular scheduled guest. Of course, I enjoyed the radio shows that we did, and I lost a mentor because not only if I asked a question, whether on the radio show or not, he would not only give me the answer, but he'd also give me the history of the answer, which was something that was like a history book. And it was like, wow. Well, I begged the people over at Citizens to please find me a replacement, and they did eventually after a year, and his name was James Gormley. James Gormley was a publisher, overall really good guy, and super knowledgeable about a lot of things. And that's really where this KISC My Health story gets started, because after a few episodes with James Gormley, he said, Peter, can I invite a guest? And I said, of course. And I said, well, who's your guest? You know, so at least I know what we're going to be talking about. And he said, I'm going to be inviting Stephen Lukawski. And I'm not from your area, so you're in your genre, your niche. I was like, I don't know who Stephen Lukawski is. He said, he's the King of Cranberries. I'm like, okay, can you give me another clue? Like, I still don't know. They said, Captain Cranman. I'm like, I like this guy already. Does he wear a cape? Yes, he does, in this costume at least. I'm not going to spread any rumors. I don't know what he doesn't do when he's off camera. But the reality is that Stephen Lukawski was on our radio show and did a fantastic job. So much so, I listened because I didn't know anything about cranberries or much about cranberries. I listened in with fascination, took some notes, and then I joined his LinkedIn. And when I joined his LinkedIn, he's got like 30 million followers or 30,000 followers, and he's posting all the time really positive stuff, and it was always a pleasure to be able to read them. I may not have understood all the stuff that he was talking about, but the reality was he was doing a good thing for the planet. And as a result of that, I had a relationship with Stephen. Well, in August of 2024, James Gormley suddenly passed away. I was in shock again. I figured I got to do the right thing. I got to call people that I know that know James. Stephen was one of the first people I called, and he already knew because he was working with James Gormley. And that's where the conversation started, where he said, you know, we have to do a radio show memorializing James. And I agreed 100%. Like, that's like an instant yes. That's like a given. And then when we were talking a little bit more, I sprinkled in something about my KISC book that we were writing. I still haven't written it, because it's a thing I teach on a napkin in like 5 seconds. I haven't been able to figure out how to write KISC in a book yet. But KISC for me stands for Keep It Simple Circle. it's a way to kind of manage your productivity, stay on track, all that sort of stuff. I've been training myself and my salespeople and everything else like forever. KISC, K-I-S-C. And Stephen said, you know what we're going to do? I'm like, what's that, Stephen? He said, we're going to do KISC My Health. And I'm like, okay. By the way, anytime Stephen's enthusiastic about it, watch out. He'll lead you off a bridge. I mean, the reality is he's like so excited about it. We're going to do KISC My Health. I know all these people. We can do all these personal interviews. We'll do all these things. I'm like, okay, I'm all in. So I bought KISCMyHealth.com, and that's why it's called KISCMyHealth.com. So it's on KISC My Health Radio. And we've been doing these radio show interviews, and I'll share with you, these are the best. These are priceless. I've listened to them all the time, many times. And you can pick them up on KISCMyHealth.com and everywhere else. We put them on Building Fortunes Radio. We put them on Humongous Radio. We put them on our AM and our FM internet stations. We put them on Amazon and Audible and what other name-dropping, Apple's podcasts and iHeartRadio and Spotify and everywhere. Like, they're all over the place. So if you see Stephen Lukawski everywhere, it's because he is. And if you see our new guest on everywhere, it's because she will be. And that's the fun part about this. And I want to say thanks to Stephen, but I also want to say thanks to our corporate sponsors, past and previous and future ones, of course. I want to say thank you to our listeners. We have passive and active listeners. Definition is passive listener just listens in and enjoys it. And an active one shares it. So share this with other people. And we started putting these up on YouTube and Facebook as well. So if it looks like we're all over the place, we are. And I certainly want to say thank you to Stephen Lukawski, for whom all of this would have never been possible. It's Stephen, his contacts, his guests, his follow-up, the countless hours that no one ever sees that he does to bring this, I think, the best library of audio recordings on the planet in this niche ever produced in mankind, ever. And Stephen, thank you so much for what you do.
Well, thank you, Peter. And you know, I as we continue to climb the mountain of inspirational, leadership interviews, I keep reminding ourselves why we keep doing this is because of the legends in front of us, before us, ones that carried the torch, and they're not with us to share this special moment. But, we've, it's just been an exciting adventure, and I just, I've been so inspired, with our next guest coming on, but I think at the end, we couldn't have, this is a not-for-profit show, so, we have to, remind our listeners that from your heart, Peter, and mine, we sacrifice time. We don't get paid to do this. This is something that we want to do. It's legacy we want to leave behind. This is part of our servant leadership style you and I have in helping others. And this is why, we think that our radio show is one of a kind. It's for me, I didn't want to do a podcast that, really told everybody, how great the industry is or how great these people are. I really, or companies are, or products or services are. I wanted the people to come on and give them the recognition that they deserved. So, but anyway, I just want to welcome our amazing listeners and thank you for joining us for another edition of KISC My Health Radio. I'm your host, along with Peter Mingils, Stephen Lukawski, better known throughout the natural product industry as Captain Cranman. Today's program is especially meaningful as we approach an incredible milestone, nearly 100 interviews over the past 2 years. When KISC My Health Radio first began, remember, Peter, it was never intended to be just another radio show. It was created as a not-for-profit educational platform with a mission much greater than ourselves. It was created as a tribute. James Gormley, the Michael McGuffins, the Stephen Fosters, the list goes on. A tribute to the pioneers, the visionaries, the entrepreneurs, scientists, educators, retailers, manufacturers, and servant leaders who built the natural product industry into what it is today. Many of these remarkable individuals are no longer with us, but their passion, dedication, sacrifices, and commitment continue to live on through the lives that they touched. We believe that legacies should be celebrated while people are still here to share their stories. Not when they're gone, but when they're alive. Every guest who joins us has climbed their own mountain. Their journey has rarely been easy. Behind every success story are years of hard work, setbacks, disappointments, adversity, difficult decisions, and personal sacrifice. Our goal on KISC My Health is to share those journeys, honestly, so the younger generations understand that success is earned through perseverance, integrity, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to serving others. This program is more than just business success. It's about character. It's about purpose. It's about leadership. It's about servant leadership, Peter, placing the needs of others ahead of your own, opening the doors for those who follow, mentoring future leaders, and making a positive difference in the lives of others. Each guest becomes a North Star, lighting the path for someone else who's searching for inspiration, direction, and hope. These stories remind us that true leadership is measured not by titles or financial success, but by the lives we influence, the opportunities we create, and the legacy we leave behind. In many ways, this radio show, Peter, carries a torch for those who came before us. We honor those who helped build this industry. We preserve their wisdom. We celebrate their accomplishments. And together, we pass that light to future generations so their contributions will never be forgotten. None of this would have been possible without the generosity of our guests. Nearly 150 industry leaders, Peter, have volunteered their time simply because they believe in giving back. They've shared not only the professional accomplishments, but also the personal lessons that shaped their lives. Their willingness to mentor others through their stories has become one of the greatest gifts this program has ever offered. I also want to express my deepest gratitude to our sponsors. We talked about this, Peter, at the beginning. This show would not be possible, KISC My Health. From the beginning, Heather Weiner and the entire Whole Foods Magazine team believed in this vision and stood beside us from our very first interview. Their support has helped make this platform possible, and we are sincerely grateful for their partnership and friendship, most of all. We also extend our appreciation to every sponsor who has joined us throughout this journey. Your belief in our mission has allowed these inspiring stories to reach listeners around the world. Today, we are so excited also with the Planet Cranberry that you talked about, which continues to grow. So what's Planet Cranberry? Well, it was created with the very same purpose that inspired KISC My Health Radio, to educate, inspire, and serve. It's far more than an e-commerce website. It's a global educational resource dedicated to cranberry, wellness, nutritional science, innovation, and healthy living. Our mission is to help consumers better understand the remarkable health benefits of cranberry beyond urinary tract health, while introducing them to the science, the people, the innovation, and the companies that are advancing wellness every day. Planet Cranberry is where education meets innovation. It's where consumers, healthcare professionals, researchers, growers, manufacturers, industry leaders can come together to learn, discover, and improve lives through nutrition. Throughout my 35 years in the natural product industry, I've been blessed to work alongside extraordinary people, just like the guests who we're going to be interviewing very soon, who taught me invaluable lessons about leadership, integrity, innovation, and service. Peter, from my heart to yours, hosting KISC My Health Radio has become one of the greatest honors of my career. The countless hours we've spent preparing interviews, researching guests, producing programs, sharing their stories has never felt like work because it's always been about giving back to an industry that has been given so much to me. If these conversations inspire just one young entrepreneur, if they encourage one person to overcome adversity, if they motivate one future leader to dedicate their life to improving the health of others, then every interview has been worthwhile. Our mission remains exactly the same as it was the first day we recorded our program: to educate, inspire, to preserve the legacy of those before us, to encourage future leaders, and ultimately to help people around the world live longer, healthier, happier lives. So, to every guest who has shared their story, to every sponsor who has supported this mission, to every listener who has joined us along the way, and to everyone working every day to improve human health, thank you. Your passion matters, your dedication and service matter. Together, we'll continue carrying the torch forward for generations to come. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce another remarkable leader whose career journey will undoubtedly inspire us all. Please join me in welcoming today's very special guest, Jennifer Greer, to KISC My Health Radio. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephen. I'm so excited to be here. Gosh, what an honor. I just love hearing people's stories, and you've created this beautiful platform for people in our industry, leaders, and just wonderful humans to share about who they are. So what an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Jennifer, you're welcome. And, we don't have a Hall of Fame legend board, do we, out there? This is one of those things. Len Monaghan and I were talking about this a while back, and how we need to, he was one of the other North Star interviews we had, and we just thought we should have a legend board, right, out there during these trade shows, whether it's Supply Side West, or even with women in nutraceuticals, have a board up there of people who have gone down this path, who created the way for the younger women in the industry to be inspired and for them to be role models. I just think we haven't done enough in our industry to remember the past legends. And of course, you and I, at the end, who's going to be around when the Mark Blumenthals are no longer here, right? Who's going to take over? So I think it's really important that your interview with us today is just another step forward to allowing the listeners to understand that we're laying down a foundation for the future, not just interviewing North Stars, but also inspiring the young, rising stars to become North Stars down the road. So anyway, Peter, before I jump into the interview with Julie and let our listeners know all about her, let's go for a quick break to our first sponsor, Pure Organics.
Here we go.
KISC My Health Radio welcomes our corporate sponsor, Pure Organic. What if reducing sugar didn't mean giving up the foods and drinks you love? That's the philosophy behind Pure, spelled P-Y-U-R-E, at pureorganic.com. Pure believes that if healthier food doesn't taste great, people simply won't stick with it. So they've created a full line of plant-based, organic, and organically sweetened sugar alternatives designed to deliver the sweetness you love without the sugar overload. From granulated sweeteners and liquid syrups to their powerful single-ingredient stevia extract, Pure makes it easy to sweeten your coffee, upgrade your recipes, and enjoy better choices without sacrificing flavor. And Pure is not just helping consumers at home. They also work behind the scenes with food, beverage, and supplement companies nationwide, helping brands reduce sugar while maintaining the taste, texture, and experience customers expect. With decades of expertise in food science and formulation, Pure is helping reshape the future of sweetness. Want to learn more about Pure? See their full line of products, discover their story, and explore what makes them different at pureorganic.com. That's P-Y-U-R-E organic.com. Visit pureorganic.com today and taste the future of sweetening. At KISC My Health Radio, we want to thank Pure for being our corporate sponsor. Now back to our show. Take it away, Peter.
And we are back with Stephen Lukawski and his special guest. So, Stephen, take it away.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you to our listeners today who have joined us to hear an amazing interview with Jennifer Greer. Now, to our listeners, they may go, who's Jennifer? Why do you have her on the air? I've never heard of her before. And there's probably many Jennifer Greers out there if they Google Jennifer Greer. But let me just let you know who Jennifer is and why she's on this program and a little bit about her background. Jennifer's a U.S. licensed naturopathic physician and nutraceuticals industry scientific advisor with more than 2 decades of experience spanning higher education, integrative medicine, and the natural product industry. Her path took her from the NCAA division of number 1 athletics administration to naturopathic medical school, from naturopathic family practice residency in Portland into private practice in Los Angeles, and then eventually to senior director of medical education of Thorne, where she built science education for millions of customers and tens of thousands of healthcare practitioners worldwide. Today, Jennifer runs her own consulting practice, helping nutraceutical and dietary supplement companies translate science into credible, compelling communication with deep expertise in gut health and microbiome science, botanicals, and women's health. Now, we can't forget this. She's also a dedicated member and volunteer and mentor with Women in Nutraceuticals, passionate about helping the next generation of women in the industry find their own footing and voice. And that is one of the main reasons, besides being this true North Star legendary icon here, why she is on this radio show. Again, welcome, Jennifer. This is your time to shine. Let the world know all about you.
Amazing. I thank you so much. It's just so great to be here.
Well, let's just start, Jennifer, where you grew up and what are some of your favorite childhood memories?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I grew up in Arkansas, actually quite rural childhood. I was born in Little Rock, but my dad, now retired, was a minister, and so we moved to where he pastored. And for most of my childhood, that was a very small town, but also not too far from my grandparents, who were farmers. So I had sort of a bit of a city upbringing / a rural upbringing, and quite a lot of farming experience.
Well, first of all, let's go Razorbacks.
Yes, Woo Pig Suey.
I love their logo. I love their colors. Arkansas. Oh, thank God I'm a country girl. All right. You are a country girl.
Yes, very much so. I like to say, though, that I'm a city girl with a country twist, or maybe vice versa, because I do love the conveniences of living in the city. But, you know, you can take the girl out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the girl, as the saying goes. So I will always be back in nature. It's true.
Your
it's
father
very
being
true.
pastor, you can't take the Christianity out of you either.
That's so true.
Bless on that. Well, I want to know more about your mom and dad. Wow. Okay, let's talk about your parents and your upbringing a little bit, and the value system that they brought into your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So my mom was actually born in Louisiana. So my grandparents were subsistence farmers. That's just how they farmed to live. And so that was her upbringing. They moved to Arkansas when she was 8. She is the 8th child out of 9 siblings that were born to her parents. And, they moved to Arkansas. They had a farm there. And then she went on to go to college. So a few of her siblings also obtained college degrees, and she became a registered nurse. One of my favorite stories about that, though, is my mom worked at Safeway, the grocery store, through her college years while she was in nursing school. And her first nursing job actually paid less per hour than she was making at Safeway. So if that tells you anything about being dedicated to your profession, she, followed her heart into nursing and had an incredible career. She was primarily a dialysis nurse, and so she was working, with individuals who were very sick with loss of kidney function. And so that allowed me to really kind of grow up with this firsthand discussion in the home of healthcare and medicine. And because my mom was working with patients who were extremely ill, and because, she saw a lot of chronic disease and how our lifestyle can play a role into that, it was very much presented to me from an early age that eating healthy food, moving your body, taking care of yourself, how important that is to the rest of your life. Because if you don't do those things well, it can come back to bite you in the future. So I really think that was instilled in me early from her nursing career, but also from her childhood with the farm. And then we helped out. We would go visit my grandparents frequently. We were helping out on the farm. From the time you could walk, you could do something, whether that was gathering eggs or, picking, shelling peas. Who knows what it might have been. There was always something you could do to help. So that started for an early age for me. My dad was actually born and raised in Little Rock, so he was kind of an inner city childhood. He went on to college where he was on a golf scholarship and played golf in college until he was drafted. And then after that, he followed in his dad's footsteps, became an electrician, and then met my mom, and then they got married. And then eventually when I was 2, my dad changed completely and went into ministry. And so most of my life, he was in ministry until he retired. So we were always, if the church doors were open, we were there. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, extra activities. Sometimes, because we lived in a church parsonage, which was right across the street from the church, which for people who are unfamiliar, a parsonage is a home that's owned by the church for the pastor and the family to live in, and that's part of the compensation structure, right, for the pastor. And so, I would sometimes go over to the church house when it was empty, when there wasn't service going on, to play the piano or read books or something like that. So a lot of my childhood was spent in and around a church as well. And I think, my parents were very serious about serving the community and being a resource for people, especially young people, and being a positive impact for them and in their lives. And even though, I would say for a large portion of my childhood, they were probably struggling more financially than I knew, but it didn't matter if people needed something. They figured out a way to help. There was always someone, usually a single mother in the church, who was selling Avon or Mary Kay or some sort of something like that for extra income. So my mother was always like, look at the Avon catalog and pick something out, because we want to help out however we can, which was just, those were interesting ways for me to learn really how you can be supportive of people without being loud about your support for people, just being sort of consistent and there for them and supporting them in the quiet ways that helps make their life better.
I think that when we look back, it's, when you're anchored, by your faith, and my brother was a minister for many years, and I look back, and my dad was a devoted Catholic, my mom's a devoted Lutheran, and we grew up in a Christian home, and I believe, that really grounded me, and as much, and we lived out in the country at the beginning, and then we moved to the city. But I just think the traditions of the family, we gave thanks every day for what we had, the blessings. We didn't look at what we didn't have. We looked at what we had, and we just gave it was all about gratitude and giving back and saying thank you, to the Lord for everything that we had at that time, because there was people who were less fortunate, but our door was always open for others. It was almost like, even today for me, it's like my front door is always open for those in need, and that's my heart, my front door to my house. It's the things that I do, and because I know there's a lot of people struggling out there, and not financially, but maybe they're spiritually broken, or maybe they're just lost, in their ways, and they just need direction and a compass, and I just so thankful that our upbringing, has given us a rock, an island, a safe place to fall through our support system that our parents raised us to believe in. And I think this is to me, I truly believe when we talk to others and they're having a bad day, I just think our inner strength gives them support and encouragement. And I really respect our parents and what they did back then. Now, tell me a little bit about your grandparents.
Yes, my maternal grandparents, again, they were subsistence farmers, just really interesting people who lived and worked the land. My maternal grandmother, her mother at least, died when she was quite young, and so she was responsible for raising her siblings. And then after her siblings were raised and she didn't have to do that anymore, she actually didn't end up getting married until she was around 28, and then went on to have 9 babies after that, which I just think is incredible on so many reasons. Wow. For the day and age that she got married, to not get married until 28 is pretty incredible. And then to go on and not just have multiple children, but to have her fertility last that long into life, that she was still able, to have such a family. I can't remember a memory of her that doesn't involve her in the kitchen. So, her role in the system of the farm and running that was making sure that there were 3 meals that were nutritious and supportive and that were ready to go throughout the day. And she worked very hard, and I spent a lot of time helping her in the kitchen. My grandfather was, from the time probably before the sun came up in the morning until dinner time at night, was outdoors. He would often have his lunch on the back porch, just quickly enough to eat something and then get back out and be working again. And he was incredible with his animals and his connection to them. I mean, he had one of his chickens that was his pet chicken. He would carry her around. He would rake up bugs for her and hold her down to eat the bugs, and just really was his pet chicken. His relationship with his horse that he hunted with was so secure that he could hunt from the back of the horse without ever getting down and never scare the horse, which was incredible. Yeah, he had really quite a deep relationship with his animals. So really from them, I learned a lot about respect of the land, respect of animals, respect of nature, and caring for people and the world, and how we need to really make those things important and put respect into them instead of them just being afterthoughts. So really grateful for those aspects of my childhood and the things that I was able to learn from them. And then my dad's parents, my papa, my paternal grandfather, was an electrician. My meemaw, my paternal grandmother, she worked outside of the home in the 1950s, when that was not common. But she always had at least a part-time job and was always doing something outside of the home, and largely to help them out financially. But also I think that just made her a better mother and a better wife and a better part of her family, because she was very extroverted, and having that connection with people and being able to connect and serve and help the community was really important to her. So I think between that and my mom working full-time really instilled in me this idea around women having careers as part of their lives, and that is viable and attainable and something worth doing.
Yeah, then it was all about hard work and sacrifices, and it was. You look at what our grandparents did. They paved the way for us. They paved the way for your parents. Your parents did the same for us.
Absolutely.
And that's why, my mom's so sweet. She's 91, and I just had dinner with her and my sister the other week, and she's so strong, stubborn and strong, and but she's enthusiastic and so curious and ambitious with life. She was never an entrepreneur, but I wouldn't be here without her. And, I look at the grandparents. You were so blessed to be able to even see your grandparents. And, our family pretty much passed on early. My dad passed away at 60. My grandparents passed away all before 60. So, it's, well, here's my mom. And, it's like, wow, it's an opportunity to give thanks every day for what she had to go through, knowing what she went through, and I just I'm so thankful. Now, did your grandmother pass on any recipes to you?
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, things like Southern style biscuits and cornbread and those sorts of things where we were taught how to make those at her side. So I couldn't write down a recipe for you, but I could stand there with you and say, okay, you're going to do this many spoonfuls about this size of this, and that sort of eyeballing it way of measuring, which she did, and she just knew how to do that, based off of how many people she was feeding that day.
Yeah, it's all upstairs. She's a scratch cook.
Yep.
Some people play. Now, when you play the piano, do you look at do you play by tone, or do you play by reading the music?
Well, I took piano lessons several times during my childhood. So I did learn how to read music pretty early, and I would say it's a little bit of a mix of both for me. I'm not a great piano player now, mainly because I haven't done it much in adulthood, but I can still read music, and so I'm grateful for that ability. Of course, I was always also in the choir and singing, and I was in a girls' quartet.
You have a great voice.
And so, well, I wouldn't say I have a great voice, but I have a choir voice. I have a supportive voice, but I'm not a soloist.
Any brothers or sisters at all?
Yes, I have an older brother, and interestingly, my brother and my sister-in-law run the Proctor camp and conference center and farm in Ohio. So it's an Episcopal-oriented camp, conference center, and farm. They are co-directors of that. And so they are in the midst of summer camp right now, and then gearing up for fall farm season. And they just love it and are made for that life. It's been so wonderful for them.
Well, God bless. Now, moving on here. Let's talk about your education. And did you have a favorite subject, in public school?
Yes,
when you were growing up.
Yes, I always have been, always will be a science girly. I always loved science. Was my favorite subject. I was very interested in all of the sciences. Anytime, in elementary school, you have kind of like different units that you go through. So you're maybe not always doing science every single day because it might be on a different day based on how you're learning. Yeah. And I would look forward to those days so much. They were always my favorite ones. If there was any kind of science experiment that we were doing, or learning something else in that world. And then when I got into high school and we, in biology where you do some dissection and really learn what the inside of bodies of organisms look like and how they work and all of that. I just was so fascinated by it.
Now, did you, at that early age, your mom's a nurse, so you grew up in that servant leadership style home of love and again, a giving heart, right? Did you feel like you had a Jesus calling moment where, you knew that this is where I was destined to go, was in the natural product industry at that time?
Yes and no. So if you had asked me when I was a little kid, probably 3 years old, what I wanted to be when I grew up, it was 100% a pediatrician. My doctor, when I was that young, was a woman, which in Arkansas at that time in the early 80s was quite rare for your doctor to be a woman. And for your pediatrician to be a woman, for sure. And she was amazing. I loved her. I believe she has passed on now, but her name was Virginia Keepley, and she was just an incredible woman, an incredible doctor, so kind, and I looked up to her so much. I also, at that time, was a little bit obsessed with my mom's pediatric nursing textbook. So even before I could read, I would just sit in the floor and flip through and look at the pictures over and over again, which is kind of funny because the pictures are, it's a textbook for learning pediatric health, right? So the pictures are of like a kid with measles, what that looks like. Yeah. How do you identify that? How do you diagnose? So I'm just fascinated flipping through a textbook of pictures and descriptions of diseases and illnesses. As a very young child, it was one of my favorite books to look at. So I knew early on that medicine was in the cards for me in some way because I was just so fascinated and interested by it. The people I looked up to were in medicine, and it felt like the right fit for me, for my interest for serving people and for helping people. But ultimately, sort of my own health journey took me away from it, and that's where I ended up in early adulthood going in a different direction before I came back to naturopathic medicine, which is something I didn't even know existed until I moved to Arizona. So, and then just thought it was the most incredible thing.
Yes. Can you walk us through your career journey? In terms of, let's start with your education. Walk us through your educational journey for now.
Yeah, so when I was in undergrad, so I started, pre-med chemistry major. I was on an academic scholarship that had very, very, very high renewal standards. And I knew that if I didn't have that scholarship, that my parents were not going to be able to pay for the college that I was at, which was a private school that was not inexpensive. So there was a lot of pressure for me to maintain this very high standard scholarship. And I would say around the beginning of my junior year, when you're in sort of those heavy pre-med classes, my entire course load was heavy science, upper level science courses. And around that same time, I had lost 3 of my grandparents in the same year and just had a lot going on. And I had sort of a history of chronic migraine, some IBS type symptoms, endometriosis, and it just like all converged on me in my junior year with stress and health and all of it. And so I ended up taking incompletes in the fall semester of my junior year to finish in the spring because I needed to step away before that semester was over and have a break to recover from everything that had been happening. But because I was attending a smaller private school, most of those science classes in college are two-part, right? So you take Organic Chemistry 1 and Organic Chemistry 2, and you can't start Organic Chemistry 2 until you finish Organic Chemistry 1, and it's only offered once a year in the spring semester. So I couldn't move forward in any of those classes for a full year at that point, since I hadn't finished the fall ones until I finished them, and I would have to wait. And then, again, factor in, my scholarship is only for 4 years. I've got to figure something else out. So what I ended up doing was I sat down with the course catalog, because at that time we had printed course catalogs, and I went through and I mapped out, here's how much time I have left in school. If I take summer school as well, what degree can I choose and graduate on time so that I don't have to continue to be in school after the end of my scholarship. And that led me to kinesiology and exercise science. So I had enough related courses that I was able to just kind of pivot that way. It meant that I took a lot of classes between the summer between my junior and senior year, and during both semesters of my senior year, I had to ask for an extra hour load beyond what you're allowed to have, and granted special ability to do that, but I did it. I was able to graduate on time, and then that meant graduating at a time where what are you going to do with that for a job, right? And also kind of in the midst of yeah, absolutely, and in the midst of a bit of a recession. So I ended up working my mom at the hospital where my mom was a nurse. She was like, why don't you apply for a job at the hospital and see if you can get on there somewhere. My first role there was as a patient representative for an intensive care unit, and then from there I transferred into the pharmacy and worked as a pharmacy tech in the hospital, which was great because it gave me some really firsthand experience with medicine, what it looks like to work in a hospital day in, day out. I became very intimately familiar with pharmaceuticals and their names and what they do, and what the common way that they were prescribed, because I was the person who was loading all of that into the system for the nurses and then taking medications up and all of that. So I learned a ton about that, and I just, in my head, felt like I didn't think that I could do it. My confidence had really been shaken by what happened in undergrad, and I just didn't feel that I could do medical school. I just didn't think I could. So what I did think I could do was get a master's degree. Now, I'm not sure why I thought that was going to be easier necessarily, but I did think I could do that. And so I started a master's degree, which I ended up doing in higher education. And so, that's a little bit of a student affairs type degree. There's a little bit of a teaching component, a little bit of a research component. It's kind of like a little bit of all of the higher education experience. There's educational theory that's part of it. So it's all of the different pieces of higher education. And I just found that fascinating. I kind of fell in love with universities. I had always been a big lover of education. My parents were huge proponents of education. They thought it was one of the most important things you could do. So they were always supportive of education. And I had a great mentor in that program who really was just great to me and thought that I could do anything in the whole world, and he was so supportive of me and anything that I wanted to do. And while I was in that master's degree program, I just got really interested. I had played sports my whole life. I was at the University of Arkansas at that point, so we talked about the Razorbacks, right? And if you grow up in Arkansas, the Razorbacks are everything. So being there at the university and around sports and athletics, I had been tutoring in the athletic department while I was there. I decided that I thought that was an interesting career path, so maybe I should work in college athletics. And my job at the time was to help recruit people for the master's degree program I was in, and part of that recruitment process was scheduling them for interviews for graduate assistant jobs on campus, and that meant that I had to go out to all the departments on campus and solicit for that. Like, are you going to be hiring a graduate assistant next year? What are you looking for? Can I get someone in to interview? That sort of thing. So I knew that the athletics department was going to be hiring, and so I just penciled myself in for an interview with the incoming graduate assistants as well. And then I was so committed to getting that role that once a week after that, I emailed the senior associate athletic director and said, hey, just wanted to check in and see if you made a decision yet. I'm really interested in this role, and I think I'd be a great fit for it. And finally, after about, 4 to 6 weeks of that, he was like, yes, it's you. Stop emailing me. So that's how I ended up starting my career in college athletics, and it was really an incredible learning experience for sure. So, yeah, happy to pause there for a moment because I've been talking nonstop, but that is how I ended up there in college athletics is really just persistence.
And the clarity, how you're able to look back like it was yesterday, right, and be able to share that experience.
Thank you. Yeah.
Do you want to acknowledge your mentor that you talked about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe he may have also passed on in the last couple of years, but his name is Lyle Gaughan, and he was a long-term professor and dean at the University of Arkansas and was just an incredible champion for the field of student affairs and for people going into higher education and really, into that sort of servant leadership role where you are helping and supporting college students into becoming who they're going to be and what they're going to be doing with the rest of their lives.
During that, time period, what did you learn about yourself the most?
Yeah, I think I learned that I am incredibly persistent when I want something and that I am not afraid to keep going after it until I get there, even when it feels like that it's not going anywhere. I can be incredibly persistent when I want to be and persevere through all sorts of things. So definitely a great learning experience. And then, that time in my career in college athletics, something else that I really learned was that is a field where in order to move up and grow in your career, you have to move to where the next job is. So when I started working in college athletics, I was in my master's degree program. When I graduated, that graduate assistantship ended. So I had to find a full-time job, which meant I knew I was going to have to move somewhere else. So my first job was at the University of South Carolina. I moved to South Carolina. Then from there, I went to Florida State University, and then I went to Mercer University in Georgia. And it was just known, like if you want to move up, you're going to have to move somewhere else. And I thankfully was able to move up very quickly in my career, and I moved to all these different places. And what I learned from that is that I can always start over somewhere new, and that it takes time, and that you have to be willing to give yourself some space to settle in and know that in time your community is going to come as long as you're persistent and you keep working towards building that for yourself. And I think I just learned that I can really do those things, that hard things are possible.
Yes. I also think, too, I always say follow his path and he'll direct you in all his ways, in that sense of if you trust in him, everything else happens and doors open up when you least expect it. How did that door open up to become the Senior Director of Medical Education at Thorne?
Yeah, that was actually unexpected as well, because to get there from college athletics, right, was a very long road. And what had happened for me was the whole time I was working in college athletics, in the back of my mind was always that persistent voice of, but you want to be a doctor, but you want to be a doctor, but you want to be a doctor. And I still just didn't think that I could do it. And I actually moved to Arizona for a PhD program because, again, in my head at that time, somehow I thought that was going to be easier, which is so silly because it's not in any way easier. But I moved to start a PhD program at Arizona State, which was interdisciplinary in nutrition, exercise, and wellness. It was super interesting, and I did a year of that program, which was great. But right after I moved there, right around the corner from my apartment, was a practice of naturopathic physicians. And because I still had sort of these persistent health things that I had been struggling with since I was a teenager, I decided I wanted to try something different, and I thought that was really interesting. So I started seeing a naturopathic doctor as my doctor, and my life changed. And all of those things that I had been struggling with were fixed, basically. And about, probably 6 to 9 months after I started seeing her, I walked into her office one day for a follow-up appointment, and I said, I think it's time for me to go to med school now. And she said, I think it is too, and I'm going to write you a letter of recommendation. And that's really how it happened. And I was in Arizona. SCNM was there, and so I thought, I'll apply at SCNM. If I get in, great. If not, I'll look at some of the other schools and go from there. And thankfully, I had all of those pre-med classes in undergrad. And so I was able to apply, and within 6 months, I was starting naturopathic medical school. So that transition for me really came organically through recapturing my own health with the help of a naturopathic doctor. And then I really, again, thought that I was going to be in private practice and that I was going to see mostly kids. And I went on. I loved everything about being a naturopathic medical student. I mean, every second of it, everything I learned, the classes, the clinical rotations, the community health clinics that I got to work in, some of the abroad healthcare programs that I got to be a part of. It was all incredible. I loved everything about it. And I was lucky enough to match for residency. Only about 10% of naturopathic doctors get to do a residency because of the lack of funding for naturopathic residency. So I was really lucky to match. And for that, I moved to Portland, Oregon, had a really wonderful, incredible residency there, and then I moved to Los Angeles to practice. And when I got out into private practice, I didn't enjoy it anymore. And the thing that I really thought that I was going to love and that I wanted to do became the biggest source of anxiety and stress in my life. And I just felt like this is not working for me. And I really love sitting with patients and talking them through their labs and helping them understand what they need and talking them through the recommendations that I'm making and why it makes sense or doesn't make sense, and explaining the science of how their bodies work to them. And so what I decided was I need to just do this, but do it on a bigger scale versus one-to-one practice. So how can I take this piece of educating people about their health and wellness and the science behind it all and do it on a bigger scale? And that's when I started looking for roles in industry. And of course, any pivot like that takes time, but after some time of networking and applying for jobs and getting to know different people in industry, I landed at Thorne. And my first role there was as medical science liaison. And so I was working very closely with the sales team in educating healthcare practitioners, and then also working with the marketing team and some of the direct-to-consumer storytelling of the products. And then over time, that grew as the company grew, like it does. And I went on to become director of medical education and then senior director of medical education with an incredible team of wonderful professionals who were working with me in creating educational programs.
Yeah. Can you tell the audience that are listening that a little bit about Thorne and just so people know that if they go to the brick and mortar retail stores, they may not find Thorne's products. A little bit about who that company was, because really at the end they're one of your star brands out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why, I wanted to work with Thorne. I actually, when I started looking to work in industry, I had kind of a list of companies that I was targeting, and they were companies that I knew that I had used their products in practice. I understood their quality. I was very comfortable with them. And so those were the sorts of companies that I wanted to work with. Thorne was one of them. So Thorne was actually started in the 1980s by a man named Al Zapp, who had worked for some other supplement companies. And the companies he was working for, he had been encouraging them to make products that were completely free of any sorts of manufacturing aids or excipients, because he wanted a perfectly pure product that would be suitable for the most sensitive individual, right? And his company he was working for said, you can't do that. It's not going to happen. You can't do it. And he said, okay, watch me. And so he started the company in his garage. Actually, I believe the first product was pure vitamin C that he was making, and he wanted the company to be built on research, and he wanted to be a thorn in the side of the supplement industry, as he described it. So he named this. Yes, exactly. So he named the company Thorne Research, but he put an E on the end of Thorne because he thought that looked like, British and fancy. So that's how it became Thorne Research, and it was a physician-only brand for the first nearly 35 years of the company's existence. And it was really focused on high-quality products that went through multiple rounds of testing, that were free of most of the common manufacturing aids and excipients, even when it meant that it would take much longer to do a production run, and which ultimately eats into the company's profits, right, if it takes longer to do a production run and clean between different production runs. But he was very committed to that and grew the company in that way. And then over the course of time, the company also became very interested in producing healthcare practitioner education around dietary supplements and implementing those in practice. And they, for a long time, had a journal called Alternative Medicine Review that was available, and you can actually still find it online with many wonderful articles and monographs there with lots of scientific information. So that's really cool. And then eventually he sold the company, and then around 2017, Thorne started selling also direct to consumer, but at that time it was really only through the Thorne website and through their Amazon store. And that was really a time in the industry where most of the companies who had been healthcare practitioner only did make a little bit of a pivot and start selling direct to consumer. And the reason that they did it was because if they didn't, people were reselling their product on Amazon, or they were making fake product and putting those companies' labels on it. So it was initially done as a way to really combat fraudulent product being sold out there, which was happening in those days quite frequently. And then Thorne has grown a lot since then, and they are in a few stores, but they still really believe in keeping their presence around, directly selling to consumers and then through the healthcare practitioner channel, because the best way to supplement is through the advice of your healthcare practitioner, because they can take your entire health history, any medications you're taking, your lifestyle, all of those things into consideration. And so they still, really believe in that model as well.
Yeah, we talk about storytelling in the industry and how companies with very little science do a better storytelling than the companies that have the science. And so the question I have for you then is, how important is integrity and scientific credibility in an industry built on consumer trust?
I think it's everything, to be honest with you. I think that having a science background for your storytelling that is true, and that you keep yourself true to that story and that message so that you have a strong bit of integrity, that is what builds trust with consumers. That's what builds trust with healthcare practitioners, and that's what builds repeat customers. So if you can't show that you are doing those things, eventually it's going to come back around to bite you. And usually what happens for a lot of companies is they end up getting in trouble with the FDA or the FTC for saying things that they really can't substantiate. I think that there's a lot of misconception about the supplement industry, even among healthcare practitioners, even among people in the industry. I often, when I'm presenting, will ask the question to my audience in a poll style question that just says, true or false style, dietary supplements are regulated. And the number of people in the industry, healthcare practitioners, consumers all across the board who still think that there's no regulation of supplements is huge, right? It's kind of surprising to me each time how many people still don't understand that dietary supplements are regulated. Now, they're regulated differently than pharmaceuticals, but they are regulated. And one of those pieces of regulation is that you can't make claims that your product does something unless you have the science to back it up. So, I think we see a lot of companies who that comes back to bite them in the end. So ultimately, as with anything in life, having support for the story that you're telling and then doing it from a place of integrity is what is going to build long-term trust and engagement for you.
Yeah. So I have a question then. Why do some of the best products that have the most science never get to the retail shelf and, at the brick and mortar side of things, or maybe never get to e-commerce to the consumer through that channel? Right? Because I've seen some really great science, right? And, a lot of clinical studies, but I don't see the product on the shelf.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, there's a couple of things that's happening here. One is a lot of times people are doing clinical trials that have disease endpoints instead of health structure function claim style endpoints, right? With supplements, you cannot make any claims that are related to treatment or prevention of disease. And if you design your clinical trial in a way that your endpoints are alluding to treatment or prevention of a disease, that science is never going to see the light of day because you can't do that without getting in trouble. Yeah. And so I think that has been a problem that I believe is being remedied now, hopefully, because we have so many more clinical research organizations who are part of the industry, and the introduction of decentralized clinical trials has helped with this a lot, and having players in that space who also really believe in strong science and integrity and selling clinical trials to companies that are within the measures of what they can then use to tell the story of their ingredients. So having science that you can't actually use in your storytelling, I think, is a big problem that can lead to a supplement never moving forward. Another one is storytelling that's just not clear, right? So a lot of times these products have names that don't really, that actually, if you are a healthcare practitioner that has, some deep knowledge in nutritional biochemistry and physiology, the name of that product might make total sense to you. But if you don't have that level of scientific knowledge, it's not going to really tell you what the product is for and how it's supporting the body. And then the story around it that the company is telling can often be just one that doesn't resonate with the end user. And so that can lead to problems with great products really making headway as well.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of good science out there, and I've seen the scientific minds behind that science, but they're not good at storytelling. And they're not good at taking that message, that science, and connecting with the consumer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or they don't have a marketing budget left over because they spent all their money on the science.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for those companies?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest piece of advice that I have is you need to be thinking about and integrating all of those pieces together from day one. So a lot of times what I see happens is products get formulated from an idea about, I want to make a product that helps people go to sleep faster. And then that, they do some research around ingredients, or a lot of times I'm seeing, especially with startups these days, they'll just ask AI to, build me a formula that does this. And not that that's necessarily wrong. You can get great information that way, and you could build a lovely formula. But at that stage, you also need to be thinking about what are the science behind the ingredients that I'm looking for. Is there a way that I can use this to build out the story of this product, and how would I go about doing that? So often the storytelling and the education piece is an afterthought. The product's already developed. It's ready to go to market. And now we're substantiating our claims and thinking about our education and our storytelling, right? At that point, it's too late. Whether you've spent all of your money on your budget or not, you're having to remake the story based off of a formula that already exists. So the biggest piece of advice I have is integrate those pieces all together from day one. What is your, as you're building out the formula of the product, what does the formula look like from all of the different pieces, from the marketing side, from the sales side, from the research and development side, from the quality side, from the education and storytelling side, and how do you put that all together as you're building your product? Then you have a much stronger story that you can tell, and you're ready to go when you launch that product. You don't have to kind of re-engineer it later.
Yeah. I still think, though, and thank you for the advice that you're giving to these companies. I still think that there's a magic formula in the industry where companies look at the cost per daily dose. They look at the cost per kilo, all right, before they bring a formulation in. All right. How much does this material cost based on all this science per daily dose? And it seems to be the daily dose, the cost associated with that takes it to the next step. If it doesn't fit into a certain formula, then it's not going to get to the mass market. Maybe it goes to the Thorns of the world, the health practitioner channel, right? When do people decide I'm going to go down the path of health practitioner channel versus the mass market when they have all this science?
Yeah, well, that decision can often be really when you're in a situation of all of the science tends to be a bit on the like disease side of things versus the consumer side. So I think in some ways we were starting to see this with some of the gut health products because they were so heavy science focused around studies that were done specifically in IBS or IBD, and that's not a story that you can tell direct to consumer, that those kinds of products for a time really ended up being geared towards healthcare practitioners, specifically because the science was so heavy on the disease side versus things like bowel regularity or, digestive comfort, the sorts of things that you can say Deshay, right? And that's a completely different scientific support study that you're using to make those claims than a study that says, this decreases the number of IBD flare-ups, right? That's a very different scientific study. So when you're looking at your ingredients, and again, I'm saying ingredients here because at this point in time, most of the research that exists is on ingredients versus finished products. Yep. So when you're looking at your ingredients, the research on your ingredients are really heavy on the side that the outcomes of studies and the population of the studies were not done in healthy people, then you're probably going to have to launch that as a healthcare practitioner-focused product, really to get it into the market. But what you then can do, and this is what I'm hoping is happening more and more, and we're really starting to see it, especially with the invention of decentralized clinical trials, is finished goods manufacturers doing clinical trials on their finished product. And that way, once you've designed a trial on your finished product, you've done it in a healthy population, your claims are substantiated, right? There's no, did the individual ingredient studies support what I'm saying about this product? You now have a study on your product as a whole, so those claims are much easier to support, and you can really design your study in such a way that you're supporting your product for the end user, being the consumer, and not necessarily through the healthcare practitioner channel.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. I'm a true believer of finding a need in the market that's not being met. Not developing new products. Like delivery systems, for example. I always say it's not how much you take; it's what you absorb at the end of the day. And so I'm a big fan of 4 out of 10 people can't swallow pills. What do we do? With 40% of the population, that so delivery systems are so key. And then I look at a lot of companies don't succeed with the formulations, and you go on e-commerce and they try to develop a product, and I don't know if you had any experience in your consulting business with e-commerce channel, but to drive traffic to the websites, e-commerce is very challenging. I hear that a lot of companies are paying more for the SEO than than the product's cost, right?
Yeah.
And so the conversion rate's not very good. Right? So the world is now really leaning towards e-commerce more and more. And but do you find that in the business world that you're in right now in your consulting practice?
Yeah, well, I think it's always a challenge, right? And I think that within the industry, or especially for people who are outside of the industry looking in, because of the rate of growth of the dietary supplements industry and how popular dietary supplements are, a lot of people see it as a get-rich-quick opportunity to make a product and sell it and make a bunch of money. The reality is the vast majority of new products that come into the marketplace don't actually make it, and they certainly don't become multi-million-dollar products for people. So I think one of the biggest things is before you decide to dive into this industry and make a new product and launch it in this industry, get as good of an understanding and knowledge base in the industry that you can possibly have. I think that's where something like, Supply Side now has their Supply Side Fresh program, which has both a dietary supplement side and a food and beverage side, where you can really learn in depth about the industry and all the different pieces of it and things that you need to know to be successful in this industry, whether that's launching your own product or working for a company. And I think that's a really good way to learn and get started and come from a place of really understanding what you're building before you try to put something out there that's not going to necessarily go the way that you think it's going to go. Because it is a difficult industry, and it's an industry with a lot of potential, but it's difficult.
Yeah. Like my good friend and mentor and true North Star leader in the industry, Joe Bradley, had indicated to me, selling ingredients, science-based ingredients, is the hardest thing to do. And what do you tell a customer, a potential customer, when they say, Jennifer Greer, I want to bring you on board, I want to hire you, you're so well connected in this industry, and I want you to sell these ingredients for me. I got all these clinical studies, all right? When am I going to get my first sale?
Yeah. The first thing I tell them then is, well, I'm not your salesperson, but I can be your storyteller or your support for that. But I am not here to close your deal, but I am here to help you get there, right? And honestly, one of the biggest things that I see, and this is where I think the advantage of having worked for Thorne and a company like that, is I understand the process of building a new product from that side, what it looks like, what the company's looking for, what the different departments in the company are looking for with a new formula, and how you need to speak to that as an ingredient supplier. So what do you really need to do to capture their attention, because they've got so many different ingredient suppliers coming at them with something, their own products that they're trying to sell into that company. So how do you capture their attention? How do you keep their attention? And how do you differentiate yourself as something that is not only going to help them make a wonderful product that their consumers, their end users love, but how do you make that process a little bit easier for them as well? And I think that's a really big piece of it that can be missing, right? Because in the past, there was a lot of ingredient sales where they would have, tell you about their ingredient, and here are some studies that we have, and then it's sort of up to you as the finished goods manufacturer to put that all together and do your claim substantiation and make your formula, all of that. But when you are a company that, say, like a Thorne, that has 250 SKUs and has multiple new products and formulation at any one time, the more of that process that can be given to you ready to go from the ingredient side, that really tells a compelling story and supports the science behind it, helps you to get there and get your product launched a little bit faster. So thinking about it from the finished manufacturer side, and what do they really need to get from idea to launch on market, and how do you support those steps along the way?
Yeah. Well, what's the timeline you give your customers, in terms of introducing a science-based ingredient to the nutraceutical industry by the time they get their first ingredient sale? What timeline do you realistically tell them the true story?
Oh my gosh. Realistically, it can vary depending on the ingredient, how saturated the market is for that ingredient, what your differentiators are, right? So I've seen everything from ingredient companies who made their first sale in a couple of months to ingredient companies where it's taken, a year and a half or 2 years to make their first big sale into a company. So really understanding where you fit in the market and how your ingredient can be delivered and differentiated from the competitors is what's going to help that needle move a little faster. Right. And then the other thing I think is don't be afraid to get your science and your ingredient in front of people. You don't need everything to be perfect in order to move forward, but you do need people to see what you have to offer in order to move forward.
I think you're generous saying the first 3 months, you might get a sale. I think at the end, I've seen, science-based ingredients, like you said, is the hardest thing to sell over a raw material, because usually the business is built on relationships and people who trust others. Right?
Agreed. I would say those are quite rare.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They are rare. And truthfully, I don't want to mislead anybody out there who's thinking they can come into the nutraceutical industry and sell an ingredient within 6 months, right? At the end of the day, it's really putting up, especially if they have no marketing budget, especially if they're just relying on connections, right? And your years of experience, and they think that, you've got the magic wand, right? Because it just doesn't work that way. And
no, it doesn't. I agree completely
on that. So at the end, I look for me, I want to help companies like you do who have science first and credibility and trust behind the brand, right? And really put don't look at the dollars. They look at the fact of why they're in the business. Is this an ingredient, or is this a finished product that you would recommend to your grandmother? And if you're saying no, then you should be in the business to sell it, right? At the end of the day. And that's
I would
a
agree
quote
with
from
that.
Michael over there. And but I want to break for a commercial, right? But when we do come back, I want you, please, if you can, to talk about mentorship and women in nutraceuticals. Will you do that for me?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I would love to talk about that.
Fantastic. Peter, take it away to our next commercial sponsor.
Planet Cranberry is our sponsor.
You've been listening to the KISC My Health Radio show on Building Fortunes Radio and the Humongous Radio Network. This KISC My Health Radio show is also available on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, as well as dozens of other platforms connected to the Internet. If you are interested in the world's best cranberry product line, you will want to get your products from Captain Cranman himself, Stephen Lukawski, from Planet Cranberry on planetcranberry.com. The website will be online before the end of the summer in 2026. Start your ordering and your inquiring about Planet Cranberry now by contacting Stephen on LinkedIn or by phone or text. The King of Cranberries, Stephen Lukawski, has always been your best source of products and information. So now it's time to get your products from Planet Cranberry directly. With Planet Cranberry and Stephen Lukawski, you can make your world a better place and help others do the same. Now, back to our KISC My Health Radio show. Take it away, Peter.
And we're back. Peter Mingils here with Jennifer Greer, and of course, Captain Cranman, Stephen Lukawski. And Stephen, I just have a quick question before you switch subjects. When Jennifer was talking about e-commerce, there's a lot of people that go and shop on Amazon or eBay or whatever for their dietary supplements. Maybe they hear about something and they say, I'm going to check for those areas. Can you give us maybe a little bit of word of advice or caution about just shopping on places like Amazon or eBay or any of the other e-commerce channels?
Is that for me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry, I misunderstood there and thought it was not for me. Okay, yes, yeah. So one of the things is, especially if you're shopping on Amazon, is you need to look for who the seller of that product is. So a lot of times you will click through and it will be that company has their actual own store on Amazon, so you know you're buying from that company directly, or the biggest reseller of supplements on Amazon is called Pattern, and so it might be sold by Pattern. So that way you can have a pretty good idea if it's one of those two things that you're getting authentic product. I would say one of the things to shy away from is if you, for example, if you're looking at Thorne product, you go to their website, you see what the price of it is on Thorne's website, and then you go look for it on another website and you find it cheaper. Resellers are not allowed to do that with supplement companies. So if you're finding it cheaper on a website than what the manufacturer sells it on their website, that's a pretty good indication it might be fake product or out-of-date product, or it might not be product that is actually what it says it is. So really do a little bit of investigation before you buy, and don't just go for the cheapest thing that you can find, because you might not be getting what you're actually thinking that you're getting when you do that.
Yeah. So a lot of people might think that Amazon is some kind of a clearinghouse for credibility, but just like Google, you can't necessarily say just because somebody showed up on a Google search that they're a credible company, like Google did the research. Amazon will basically ship anybody's product that wants to pay them for shipping. So I think a lot of people really need to know that there are fraudulent products out there, not so many good quality products. I mean, somebody's probably taken the shipments that quality companies reject and reboxing them up or relabeling, and those are sold less expensive. So would you advise a little bit of caution based on making your decision only on price if you're shopping?
Yeah, absolutely. I would always say to exercise some caution there. And then, all of the big supplement companies in the industry have people on staff who part of their job is managing fraudulent product on the internet. So it's out there, and some of these fraudulent labels look incredibly similar to real ones, especially in the day of the capability of AI that we have today. So it can be really difficult to spot the fake thing out there. So I think that one of your biggest indicators really is price, and that the price of the product should be incredibly similar to what the company is selling it for themselves. So be aware of that, and just know that if what you're looking for is a less expensive product, there are brands out there that are reputable, high quality brands that are making less expensive products. And one of those that comes to mind for me is Now Foods. I think that they do a good job of making affordable products that are high quality for people. And so, just because it's on Amazon doesn't mean that it's safe, that it's real. And that also brings up a good point for me, that just because something is natural doesn't mean it's safe. And so I just want to throw in this other piece of advice, which is you should always follow the instructions on the label for the amount of a product that you are taking, or the instructions of your healthcare provider. Don't think that just because it's a natural product, you can take more than the recommended amount and it be completely safe, because it's just not a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And Jennifer,
Stephen, go ahead.
Jennifer, would you not also ask your health practitioner first before you buy a product? Make sure it's not going to interfere in any of the medications that you're currently.
Absolutely, yes.
Right.
Especially if you are taking medications, you should ask your healthcare provider before you take any supplement. But ideally, you should talk to your healthcare provider about any supplements that you're taking ever, and always have an open conversation there for sure. They're going to be, good sources of advice and can help you understand that it's not going to interfere with your medication. And there are a lot of things that people just don't know that interfere with medications. I mean, even a lot of medications will say on the label not to eat grapefruit when you take your medication, because grapefruit goes through the same pathway in the liver that medication is metabolized by, and it can alter the way that happens in the body. And that happens, with other natural products as well. So yes, agree completely. Always talk to your healthcare practitioner.
Yeah. And the other thing, Peter, I'm just going to touch quickly on this, because I really want to jump into the women and nutraceuticals. There are ingredients that have a shelf life and they expire. Mm-hmm. But where do those go when they expire? This is a problem that's in our industry today. And really it's about controlling the adulteration, controlling where that material goes, because it goes back on Amazon at times.
Yep.
It'll be going back on another label, and then all of a sudden you've got a fraudulent product that's expired, right? Because we haven't put systems in place to track down this material of where it goes. Right. Would you agree with me on that?
100% I agree. Yeah, and it's absolutely true that ingredients that get rejected by one company for not meeting that company's quality standards just get sold to somebody else. They do end up on a product on the shelf somewhere, because there's always somebody out there who's willing to buy that cheaper ingredient, whether, it's adulterated, out of date, whatever. They really don't care. And so, yes, absolutely, that stuff ends up back on the shelf all the time.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's, when you work with advisors, that you can trust, and you research those advisors and you research those companies before you buy a product and they put their name behind it, there's credibility and trust behind those finished retail products. But you have to do your homework. I'm just telling you, consumers out there, and no, we're trying to help you, right? But you have to help us, right? And in a sense of listen to what we say, all right? Just because it's a low price doesn't mean it's quality, right? You buy one, get 2 products free. What's that telling you? Too good to be true. So please, we want to help your life, live longer and healthier, but we want to guide you, right? There's a lot of great companies out there that are doing the right thing, and we just want to make sure we direct you to those companies. And unfortunately, in every industry, there's just bad actors out there. And so it's,
always.
Yes, absolutely. So, women in nutraceuticals, you're a mentor, you're a leader. I want to ask you 2 things. What was your greatest accomplishment that you have achieved in your career? And what has been the most challenging setback you had to face, and how did you overcome that?
Oh, my goodness. Those are 2 incredible questions. And the answer might be the same thing for both, which is launching my own independent consulting business, which is something that I really just didn't think that I could do for a long time. Part of it was I had my own private practice when I was in clinical practice, and I didn't love that experience as much as I hoped to. And so, yes, anxiety and fear. Yes, exactly. And so I wasn't really sure that was something that I ever thought that I would do or that I wanted to do. But it was actually through Wynn's mentorship program when I was on the mentee side, and I had a mentor who was or is, because I still consider her a mentor, even though we're not in a formal mentorship now, but Rajat Shah, who is a co-founder of Nutriventia, which is an ingredient company. And she is the first person who really started to plant the seed in my ear of like, hey, you have a lot of knowledge to offer that could really benefit companies in a way that you could do as an independent consultant that you can't do when working full-time in industry for another company. And maybe we should think about that. So over the months of our mentorship and her planting that seed in my mind is really what got me started thinking that this is something that I could do. But like any business, it's not easy to get a business off the ground and to stick with it, because the early days of business are always challenging, and you have to learn as you go. You have to be willing to put an imperfect product out into the world. You have to be willing to put your face out into the world, and you have to, be willing to speak up and to take a stand and to pivot and to learn how to creatively problem solve and stick with it when the days are hard and just keep going. So I really think that it's the same answer to both of those questions, which is launching my independent consulting business and sticking with it.
Well, but you talked about mentorship. That's become one of your, clearly it's become one of your passions. And why has it become such an important part of your career that you want to help others?
Well, I think for me, that has always been a big part of my life and what I do. In fact, I was talking to my mom this morning, and I said, I just really like people and I want to help them out. And sometimes that's a problem. Most of the time it's really great, but sometimes it creates problems when I overcommit myself to too many things or whatever it might be. But I have always just really enjoyed supporting people, cheering people on, seeing other people shine. And when I moved into the senior director of medical education role at Thorne, I was able to build out a team, and through that process, I had 2 younger women in industry, and newer into the field and newer in their careers, who reported to me, and it really gave me the opportunity to experience mentorship in a different way and leadership in a different way. And how do you support someone who is new in this industry into finding their way in a way that builds confidence within them, in a way that allows them to believe that they can grow and move forward, and that they can develop their career in any direction that they want it to go, that they can dream big and they can go after those dreams, and that you're going to be there to support and encourage them and help them along the way. And I really just loved the experience of watching those women grow in their careers and being able to support them in that and give them the space to explore, to try new things. And, one of my philosophies with leadership, especially when you have people who report to you directly, is to let them go give it a try and come to you with questions, and be there to support them and let them know that you're going to be there to help, but give them the opportunity to try it on their own first. Because to me, getting out there and trying it on your own instills within you a sense of confidence that you can do it in a way that maybe having your hand held through the process doesn't necessarily do. Now, of course, everybody's a little different, and you need to know your people well enough to know what different people need different levels of support. But through that experience is what really made me start to realize 2 things. One is mentorship is bidirectional. And a lot of times as women, we think that we are not far enough along in our career yet to be mentors, but there's always someone who is not as far along with you in their career yet, or who is just in a different place where they can benefit from your support and your encouragement and your knowledge. But you are also going to learn something from them through the process as well. Mentorship is always bidirectional. I don't think it's ever one directional by nature, unless you just are not as invested in it as it takes. And then the other thing is, just get out there and do it and support people and help people out, because it's an incredible industry. Everybody's wonderful and supportive and really wants to see other people succeed. But there are still not enough women in high-level positions in the industry yet. And so we need to support and encourage each other and help each other out. And mentorship, whether it's formal or informal, is one of the best ways that you can do that. And I would say at this point I probably have more informal mentorships than I do formal. And I'm grateful to have mentors that I work with, and I'm grateful to be able to support people as mentors in their lives, including, some of my former coworkers and colleagues that I still stay in touch with and support and encourage on a regular basis.
So Jennifer, let's step back a little bit here. I've got 3 questions in this whole women in nutraceutical. But first of all, why don't we have more women leaders, in the natural product industry? What's holding it back? Second, what advice do you want to give the younger generations, the women who want to come into the nutraceutical industry? And third, what qualities make a great leader amongst women today?
Oh, I love these. So the first one, which is why don't we have more women in higher level positions yet, I would say is the same answer across pretty much every industry, right? Which is we are not there with equality yet, and we need more male allies to support the growth of women and to, support forward movement and women in higher level positions. Because when you look at the data and the statistics, most of the time men will apply for a job or put themselves forward for a position when they only have a fraction of the requirements that are listed in a job description, whereas women will only apply for a job if they are close to 100% match on it. And that's a big disparity between how people put themselves forward for new roles. And often we need someone in our corner who is not only going to encourage us, but might also mention our name in a room where it's not heard. Even though things have changed a lot in the world, there's still a lot of decision-making that happens in an informal way, and that happens in conversations that happen outside of those formal office areas, right? It might not be on the golf course like it was a long time ago, but there's still a lot of informal decision-making that happens. And if you are not in the room where those discussions happen, or your name doesn't come up there, then that might not happen for you. So I think that we need a lot more male allyship and support for the growth of women in this community. And I think one of the great things about WIN as an organization is we have some incredible male allies that are supportive of the organization, of the industry, and of seeing women succeed in their careers as well. So I think that's kind of where we're at there, and hopefully that's going to continue to improve. Right now, I would say the place where I see the biggest change of women in leadership roles is or high-level leadership roles is women starting their own companies. A lot of times because they've become frustrated of the process outside of that. So continuing to support the growth of women in business for all people, I think, is really important. For women who are just starting out in their careers in this industry, so I think some of the best advice I would give is to be open, to be curious, and to build your community of people. We are an incredible industry with wonderful, generous people, and having a supportive community that you are a part of, where you are supporting and encouraging other people and they are supporting and encouraging you, is always going to serve you well in this career field. I think it's a great industry in that there's a lot of opportunity, but it's still an industry where a lot of people find their jobs through their network and their community. So, you never know when you're going to be looking for a new role, because you never know what might happen at the company you're at now. So be a part of the community and actively build that.
Yes. Like I said, don't burn your bridges.
Yes.
Out there.
Yeah, exactly. Don't burn the bridges and keep your community strong. I think that those are great. And then key qualities of leaders. So empathy and curiosity are two of the biggest ones, and gratitude and servanthood. I think those make a strong leader that also builds strong leaders that come after them. So if you can keep, empathy and care for other people, come from a place of curiosity. For example, if someone who is a high performer on your team is suddenly struggling, maybe the question is, what's happening in their life? Is there something going on, outside of work that's affecting their work performance? And being curious about that and having empathy for people's lives outside of work, I think is huge in leadership. And that's how you build long, loyal, lasting relationships. And then being supportive and grateful for those who work with you. So when you're in a leadership role, there are a lot of people who are supporting you in that role, and so showing gratitude so that they know that you're appreciative of all of the ways that they support you, I think is really important. And then, that servanthood aspect. So as leaders, we are really here to support other people in being successful. And I think that the higher you get into leadership, your success is even more dependent on the people who are falling under your leadership umbrella. So you need all of them to get where you are, and you need to help and support them. The higher they shine, the more that's going to make you shine as well.
Jennifer, do you think there's different qualities that make a leader great in terms of men versus women? Do you think leadership qualities vary to become a good leader?
Yeah, I think that the base qualities of leadership and really are the same, no matter who you are. And being authentic, being true to yourself, being true to who you are, caring about other people, being someone who listens, who sees people, who is a safe space. Those things are not specific to men or women. They just make good leaders across the board. So to me, I don't think that there's necessarily, I think that we all embody traits that have been historically attributed to men versus women, and we all embody a variety of traits across those, but it's the things that really allow you to see and support other people and to be a positive force in the lives of other humans that really makes a good leader regardless.
Yeah, one of the important qualities I have seen on a really great leader, I would say a good leader from an extraordinary leader from a good leader. There's a big difference, right, out there. But one of the skill sets is being able. It's a small 5-letter word, but it's so important, right, in the business world, and that is the word pivot. The ability, right, to change directions.
Yes.
Right, and how important has that word played in your career so far?
Oh my gosh, I feel like my whole career has been a pivot, but in a good way. And I think that being adaptable is huge, right? Because everything in life, for the most part, is dynamic, right? Things are constantly changing. Even, little things that you don't think about, like the chair that you sit in every day, it changes just a little bit every single day, maybe imperceptibly, but it does change just a little bit every single day, right, from you sitting on it. So everything changes just a little bit constantly, and some things change very fast and in big ways. And so the better able that you are to kind of roll with that you have some resiliency, some stress management qualities, and just and really creative problem solving, so that you can find solutions and move forward versus kind of staying stuck in the mindset of what your expectations were or what you thought something was going to be, because things are changing constantly. And I would say in this industry specifically, everything changes all the time, and that is a major player in getting a new product from concept to market. That changes every single day, and for the most part, the timeline of what that looks like also changes constantly. And when you think you're going to launch a new product and when that product actually comes to market are generally two very different things. You have to be able to pivot and adapt, or you're really not going to survive.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, and I want to just reach out and before I forget, when it comes to women in leadership, I'd like to reach out and say congratulations to Abigail Buckwalter, now CEO of Ocean Spray, and who was just at the MBJ Summit and gave a talk on women in leadership. So,
which I heard was phenomenal, by the way.
What's that?
Oh, I heard that her talk at MBJ was phenomenal. Everyone in my circles were talking about how incredible it was. So kudos to her, for sure, on her new role, and for that.
Ray and all the 700-plus growers out there, you've got a great leader to take Ocean Spray to the next generation and of success to greater heights. But more importantly, it's inspirational for all the future leaders and women. In our industry. And,
absolutely.
And yes, and all I ask is everyone needs to understand that having emotion has no place in the business world. Don't let other people's feelings be directing you towards your future growth. I'm inspired by others who I learn every day. I'm a student that is never ending. I'm teachable. I'm coachable. All right, I want to learn as much as I can, and I'm inspired by people who are smarter than me, all right, and can teach me how to grow, because I'm like a sponge, right? So, but there's no room to allow somebody to get the best of you in your emotions. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the strong qualities of a leader is really separating emotion from the business world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just for women, but also for men. I have seen men yell at men,
mm-hmm.
all right, and get upset with men, all right, and just become a different person. Now,
mm-hmm.
I've seen, responses in the industry where people just let that roll off. They don't let
mm-hmm.
it bother them, right, because we don't know if that person's having a bad day, what pressures and what stresses they're under. Like you had mentioned before, anxiety, fear, stress, They're always knocking on our door. But I think it's just controlling our emotions the best we can. Really separates a good leader from an extraordinary leader out there.
Yes, emotional maturity.
Yes, that's exactly right. Know when to use your wisdom, when to listen more and talk less. Right? And those are, some people don't have skill sets. Right? And they take things personal. You can't take things personal in the business world. And some people don't have that makeup. So they take everything personal.
Yeah.
And, so this is something I look upon in my career. What I have learned in university, even having a master's degree, has never been enough to teach me what happens in the business world.
I agree.
They don't have a degree. Okay? So for you going in the business world on your own as a consultant, right, just realize sometimes we have to have an iron stomach and not let things get the best of us out there, right? Because I've seen things in this industry that university never taught me.
Yes, agreed. Right? That is such good advice.
And that's why we pray. We pray for people, right? And that they can find their way through whatever problems they're going through, right? Because they just don't know what what they've done and how they hurt others, and with their words or their actions, right? And so this is really the key component that I see, in leadership. Empathy, like you talked about, forgiveness, compassion. So anyway, we're coming to a close here, and I really now just want to ask you a couple, questions here regarding your younger self. If you were 18, 20 years of age all over again, what would you tell yourself that you've learned in the past?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things that I would tell myself. I think one of the biggest ones is what you just talked about, which is not taking everything so personally and learning how to separate fact from feeling, and most importantly, having a strong community always surrounding you so that you have some mentors and sounding boards when you are in that space of not being able to separate fact from feeling, and you need someone that can talk you through that. I think that's so important to have. And then I think I would also tell 18-year-old me, stay open to possibility, stay curious about what could happen, and don't feel like you have to live the life that you should. And I say should in air quotes, because I think we all kind of come up in life, especially through young adulthood, thinking that our life is supposed to look a certain way. And it doesn't have to look a certain way, but be open and curious to opportunity and possibility. Say yes more than you say no, but have strong boundaries and say no when it's appropriate.
Yeah, I've looked at my career, at 18 years of age now to where I am today. If I look at the 4 pillars of strength, I look at, faith, trust, respect, and hope. And I look at that and I go, wow, what a foundation to have faith, to trust others, right? To have hope and a sense of no 2 days are the same, right? That, get through this storm, right? That, there's a bigger door opening in life. One door closes, another opens. Right? And I think that's, I look in life how it goes by so quickly, and we look back, every person that's come into our life has touched us. Whether it's, I turn negatives into positives, but the positive is that we're a better person for knowing them. And they've touched our heart. They've been sent into our life for a reason, season, or a lifetime. But I think most importantly, this world, Jennifer, is a better place with you in it. I'm a better person for knowing you. And I'm so glad that the natural product industry has a North Star shining upon it. Because you are going to be one of those amazing stars in the sky right? Because your best years are ahead of you in your new business venture. And any company that brings you on board is blessed to have you and working with them, right? Because you're getting authenticity, integrity, trust, credibility. You are getting a person who comes from a background of resiliency, from the ground up, from the farming community, anchored by your faith. I just believe that you're, like I said, the industry, the natural product industry, is just so blessed to have you there, and your friends that you know, the lives you touch along the way, right? They're going to be better at what they do because you've instilled more confidence in them through your own strengths. So congratulations. Job well done.
Thank you so much. That is so incredibly kind and wonderful to hear, and wonderful of you to say. I'm so lucky to know you and to have had this opportunity. I'm grateful for our industry and the incredible people that we know, and that I get to do this every day, and that I get to work with and get to know wonderful people all over the world who are really, truly invested in making a difference in the lives and the health of other people. And what a joy it is to get to encourage and support other people along the way. It's just truly wonderful, and I'm so grateful for it and for being here today. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. Let's just go out there and we'll spread the news. You know, that in life, anything's possible when you put your mind to it. And how you do one thing is how you do everything. And all we have to do is just start by being kind to one another. Right? And that is so simple. You know, it's just an investment that doesn't cost anything. Right? Yeah. And so, and to our listeners out there, this show, right, it wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for you. Right? We hope that our words inspire you. We hope that you'll take whatever messages we can give you and build upon that, because you're the future. Look in that mirror. You're a masterpiece, a work of art. You know, the good Lord spent time creating something special. You can go out there and make a difference. I don't care what your profession is, right? But you are put on this earth to go out there and make a difference in life, and we thank you so much. So, Peter, another amazing interview with Jennifer Greer.
This has been amazing. Jennifer, thank you so much. You made it so interesting and so easy. So, Stephen, this is perfect. She was just absolutely fantastic. For those people that are listening in, you just heard from Jennifer Greer. We'll make sure that there's notes on the description inside of KISC My Health. And for all those people listening in, including our corporate sponsors and previous and past corporate sponsors, as well as active and passive listeners, I want to say thanks, Jennifer, Stephen, for putting on a wonderful show. And Jennifer, I know you have a lot of years to be able to make a big influence on this industry. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing, whether it's direct or indirect mentorship or whatever you're doing with your consulting and helping make the world a better place with better products. Stephen, thank you, and everybody check it out on KISCMyHealth.com.
You've been listening to the KISC My Health radio show on Building Fortunes Radio. Thanks for listening. This KISC My Health radio show is brought to you by Stephen Lukawski. Stephen is known as the Cranberry King, universally known as Captain Cranman. Stephen has over 30 years of experience working with manufacturers and marketers of dietary supplements and natural ingredients to make this world a healthier and a better place. You can check out Stephen Lukawski on LinkedIn and on the KISCMyHealth.com website. We are glad you listened in. Spread the word. And check out previous KISC My Health radio episodes. Bye for now. It's been our privilege to have you listen in. At Building Fortunes Radio, we wish you the success you deserve and are willing to work for. Now go make the world a better place.
Recorded.
Perfect. Jennifer, that was great.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Oh, that was so fun.
You did such
Thank
a great
you.
job. You did such a great job. Yeah, you made it easy. You made it easy.
Thank
you.
That
was perfect.
Oh, it was absolutely my pleasure. I had the best time.
Thanks. Go enjoy your family. I know you said you're visiting with your parents. Go do that, and then we'll send you the link when Stephen tells me to publish it, and you could use it however you like. And if you have any questions, just let me know. I can walk you through a lot of things.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
All right, have a great
bye.
day.
Thanks, bye.